Chapter 1. Whispers of the Unknown. In a town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, Fabian found himself drawn to a path he had never taken before. The early morning mist clung to the air, giving the world a dreamlike quality. The cobblestone streets were empty, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Fabian's footsteps echoed softly as he walked, his mind quiet, yet filled with an unshakable sense of anticipation. The path led him to the outskirts of town, where the familiar gave way to the unknown. An old, weathered bridge stretched across a narrow river, its wood creaking under Fabian's weight as he crossed. The water below murmured secrets as it flowed, carrying with it the whispers of stories long forgotten. Beyond the bridge, the landscape changed. Wildflowers grew in abundance, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the muted tones of the town. Fabian paused, taking in the beauty of the scene, the air thick with the scent of earth and blooming life. There was something magnetic about this place, something that called to him on a level he couldn't explain. As he ventured further, a figure appeared in the distance. A woman, her silhouette framed by the morning light, stood at the edge of a small clearing. Fabian's heart quickened as he approached, the feeling of familiarity mixed with the thrill of discovery. The woman turned slowly, and in that moment, their eyes met. Perle. Though they had never met, there was a recognition in their gaze, an unspoken connection that transcended words. Fabian felt the world around them blur, leaving only the two of them in sharp focus. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of fate, as if the universe itself had conspired to bring them together in this forgotten corner of the world. Without a word, Fabian and Perle stood in silence, the moment stretching into eternity. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the spell. But there was no need for words, no need for explanations. In the stillness of that moment, they both understood. The path that had brought them here was only the beginning. Chapter 2. A chance meeting. Days passed, and life in the small town continued with its usual rhythm. Fabian found himself unable to shake the memory of that morning by the river, where he had first seen Perle. He wandered the streets with a purpose that eluded him, his thoughts constantly drifting back to that fleeting encounter. The air around him felt charged, as if something extraordinary was about to happen. On an overcast afternoon, Fabian decided to take a different route home. The sky was heavy with the promise of rain, the clouds hanging low and thick. He walked briskly, his mind a whirl of emotions he couldn't quite name. The familiar streets soon gave way to the edge of the forest, where the trees stood tall and imposing, their branches intertwining like fingers reaching out to one another. It was there, among the shadows of the trees, that he saw her again. Perle. She was standing near an old oak tree, her back to him, gazing at something hidden from his view. The sight of her stopped him in his tracks, a mixture of surprise and inevitability washing over him. Perle turned slowly, as if sensing his presence, and their eyes met once more. The world around them seemed to pause, the moment suspended in time. Fabian felt his heart skip a beat, his breath catching in his throat. There was a softness in her expression, a quiet understanding that mirrored his own. Without a word, Perle took a step forward, her gaze never leaving his. Fabian felt an invisible force drawing him closer, and he took a step toward her as well. They met in the middle, standing side by side beneath the towering oak. The leaves above rustled gently in the wind, a soft symphony that played just for them. Fabian's hand brushed against the rough bark of the tree, his fingers tracing the grooves and ridges as if searching for something. Perle reached out as well, her hand coming to rest beside his. For a moment, they stood together in silence, their hands inches apart, the only sound the distant rumble of thunder. As the first drops of rain began to fall, they both looked up, watching as the sky opened up above them. The rain fell steadily, soaking the earth and everything upon it. But neither Fabian nor Perle moved. They stood together beneath the oak tree, their hands still resting against the bark, as if the rain itself was weaving their fates together. When the rain finally ceased, and the clouds began to part, Fabian and Perle turned to face each other once more. The connection between them felt even stronger now, as if the rain had washed away the barriers that had once separated them. Without a word, they knew they were meant to meet, to cross paths in this vast, unpredictable world. And so, without looking back, they walked together, side by side, into the unknown. Chapter 3: Echoes of the Past. The days that followed were filled with a quiet anticipation. Fabian and Perle began to meet regularly, their encounters seemingly orchestrated by fate rather than design. Each meeting took place in different parts of the town, as if the world itself was eager to show them every hidden corner and forgotten place. One morning, Fabian woke with a sense of purpose. The air was crisp, the sun casting a golden glow over the rooftops as it climbed into the sky. He felt an inexplicable pull toward the old part of town, where history lingered in the cracks of ancient buildings and cobblestone streets. As he wandered through the narrow alleyways, Fabian found himself drawn to a small, abandoned chapel. The structure was weathered and worn, its stone walls covered in ivy and moss. The wooden door creaked as he pushed it open, revealing an interior bathed in soft, dusty light. Inside, the chapel was eerily quiet, the only sound the faint rustling of leaves outside. Fabian's footsteps echoed as he walked down the center aisle, past rows of decaying pews. At the front of the chapel, a single stained glass window cast colorful patterns on the floor, painting the space with hues of blue, red, and gold. Fabian paused, his gaze drifting to the window. The image depicted an angel with outstretched wings, its face serene and sorrowful. As he stared at it, he felt a deep sense of familiarity, as if he had seen it before in another life. The feeling was so strong that it momentarily took his breath away. He was not alone in the chapel. Perle stood near the altar, her figure partially obscured by the shadows. Fabian hadn't noticed her at first, so lost was he in the atmosphere of the place. When their eyes met, there was no surprise between them, only a sense of shared understanding. Perle stepped forward, moving with the grace of someone who belonged to another time. She reached out to touch the stained glass, her fingers tracing the outline of the angel's wings. Fabian joined her, his hand resting on the cool surface of the window beside hers. In that moment, the past seemed to seep into the present, filling the space around them with echoes of forgotten memories. The chapel felt alive, pulsing with the energy of those who had once sought solace within its walls. Fabian could almost hear their whispers, could almost feel the weight of their hopes and fears. As they stood together, Fabian sensed a deep connection to Perle that went beyond anything he had ever known. It was as if they had been here before, as if their souls had walked these halls in another era, bound together by an unbreakable bond. The chapel held their secrets, guarding them in silence, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. The light from the stained glass flickered, casting shifting patterns on the walls. Fabian and Perle watched as the colors danced, their hands still resting on the window. There was a sense of peace in the air, a feeling that whatever had happened in the past was guiding them toward a future they could not yet see. Without speaking, they turned and left the chapel, stepping out into the light of day. The town around them buzzed with life, oblivious to the profound connection that had been rekindled within those ancient walls. As they walked side by side, the echoes of the past seemed to follow them, a silent reminder that their journey was far from over. The path ahead was unknown, but Fabian and Perle were ready to face it together, guided by the whispers of a history that had shaped their present. Chapter 4: silent beginnings. The autumn sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the fields that bordered the town. The landscape was ablaze with color. Golden leaves fluttered in the breeze, and the ground was blanketed in a rich tapestry of red and orange. The air carried the scent of earth and decay, a reminder of the cycle of life that was both ending and beginning. Fabian found himself drawn to the edge of town, where the forest met the open fields. It was a place of transition, where the wild met the tamed, and where the boundaries between the known and the unknown blurred. He walked slowly, his eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for something he couldn't name. As he reached the edge of the forest, he saw Perle standing near a large oak tree. The tree's gnarled branches stretched out like arms, their leaves rustling in the gentle wind. Perle's presence was like a beacon, a quiet assurance that he was in the right place. Fabian approached her, the ground soft beneath his feet. The two of them stood together in silence, their bodies framed by the vibrant colors of autumn. There was a sense of peace in the air, a calm that settled over them like a warm embrace. They didn't need words to understand each other. Their connection had deepened to the point where silence spoke volumes. Perle turned her gaze to the ground, where a small sapling had taken root at the base of the oak tree. Its delicate leaves trembled in the wind, and its slender trunk swayed slightly, as if testing its strength against the forces of nature. Fabian knelt beside the sapling, his fingers brushing the earth around it. The soil was rich and dark, full of potential and promise. Together, they worked in quiet harmony, tending to the young tree with care. Fabian gathered stones from the nearby field, creating a protective circle around the sapling to shield it from the elements. Perle gently pressed the soil around its roots, ensuring that it was firmly anchored in the earth. Their movements were slow and deliberate, a silent ritual that connected them to the land and to each other. As they worked, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the scene. The colors of the leaves seemed to glow, their beauty intensified by the fading light. Fabian and Perle paused to admire their work, their hands still covered in soil. The sapling stood tall and proud, a symbol of new beginnings in a world that was constantly changing. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of contentment. Fabian and Perle knew that the sapling would grow strong and tall, just as their bond would deepen and flourish over time. The oak tree, which had stood for generations, seemed to watch over them, its ancient presence a reminder that they were part of something much larger than themselves. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Fabian and Perle stood together, their hands lightly touching. The day had been one of quiet beginnings, a moment of connection that had taken root just like the sapling at their feet. They knew that their journey was just beginning, and that the path ahead would be filled with challenges and triumphs. Without a word, they turned and walked back toward the town, leaving the sapling and the oak tree behind. The evening sky was painted with shades of pink and purple, a promise of a new day to come. Fabian and Perle walked side by side, their steps in sync, as if they had been walking together all their lives. And as they walked, the silent beginning of their love story unfolded, its roots growing deeper with every passing moment. Chapter 5. The Unspoken Connection. The town was enveloped in the soft light of early morning, the mist clinging to the rooftops and winding its way through the streets like a delicate veil. The world was hushed, as if holding its breath in anticipation of the day ahead. Fabian found himself drawn once more to the outskirts, where the forest met the fields and the boundary between the familiar and the unknown blurred. Today, the air felt different, charged with a subtle energy that made his skin tingle and his heart race. Fabian's steps quickened as he approached the place where he and Perle had planted the sapling. The memory of their shared moment was vivid in his mind, a quiet bond that had grown stronger with each passing day. When he arrived, Perle was already there, standing beneath the oak tree. The sapling at its base had grown noticeably, its leaves a vibrant green that stood out against the autumnal hues surrounding it. Pearl's eyes were fixed on the young tree, her expression one of quiet contemplation. Fabian could feel the connection between them even before she turned to acknowledge his presence. There was no need for words. They stood side by side, their hands barely touching, but the warmth of Pearl's presence was enough to fill Fabian with a sense of peace. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of meaning, of understanding that went beyond anything that could be spoken aloud. Together, they began to walk, leaving the oak tree and sapling behind as they ventured deeper into the forest. The path was narrow and winding, covered in a blanket of fallen leaves that crunched softly beneath their feet. Fabian felt the world around them fade away, leaving only the two of them in this secluded, timeless place. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of birds, and the soft murmur of a nearby stream. Yet, within this symphony, there was a stillness that seemed to echo the bond between them. Fabian and Perle moved in harmony, their steps perfectly synchronized, their bodies attuned to each other in a way that felt effortless and natural. As they walked, Fabian's mind wandered to the countless moments they had shared, each one a thread in the tapestry of their connection. There were no grand gestures or declarations, only the quiet certainty that they were meant to walk this path together. The silence between them was a language all its own, one that spoke of trust, of understanding, and of a love that needed no words. They came to a small clearing where the trees parted to reveal a view of the rolling hills beyond. The morning mist was beginning to lift, revealing the patchwork of fields and forests that stretched out before them. Fabian and Perle stood at the edge of the clearing, their hands brushing against each other as they took in the view. The landscape was vast and endless, a reminder that their journey was just beginning. But there was no fear in Fabian's heart, no doubt in his mind. He knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, bound by the unspoken connection that had grown between them. As the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the land, Fabian and Perle turned to each other. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Fabian felt as though he could see into her very soul. The love they shared was not something that needed to be expressed. It was simply there, woven into the fabric of their existence, as natural and as necessary as the air they breathed. With a gentle smile, Perle took Fabian's hand, and together they continued their walk. The path before them was unknown, but it didn't matter. They had each other, and that was enough. The unspoken connection between them was all they needed, a silent promise that whatever came their way, they would face it side by side. And as they walked, the world seemed to come alive around them, echoing the quiet, powerful love that had taken root in their hearts. Chapter 6: Dances in the Rain. The sky was heavy with clouds, their dark, swirling masses stretching across the horizon. The air was thick with the promise of rain, the scent of impending storms lingering in the atmosphere. Fabian could feel the electricity in the air, a tingling sensation that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. The town was eerily quiet, as if waiting for the heavens to open and release the deluge. Fabian wandered through the empty streets, his mind on Perle. The connection they shared had deepened with each passing day, and he felt a constant pull toward her, as if she were the missing piece of a puzzle he had been searching for his entire life. Today, that pull was stronger than ever, guiding him toward the outskirts of town, where the forest began. As he approached the familiar path, the first drops of rain began to fall, soft and tentative at first. The leaves overhead provided some shelter, but Fabian knew it wouldn't be long before the storm broke in full force. He quickened his pace, eager to find Perle before the rain became too heavy. He found her standing in the middle of a small clearing, Her face turned toward the sky as the rain began to fall more steadily. The sight of her took Fabian's breath away. There was something ethereal about the way she stood there, completely still, as if she were one with the storm itself. Without hesitation, Fabian joined her in the clearing. The rain fell harder now, soaking through his clothes and plastering his hair to his forehead. But he didn't care. All that mattered was that he was with Perle, and in that moment, nothing else existed. The rain was relentless, pouring down in sheets that obscured the world around them. The ground beneath their feet quickly turned to mud, but Fabian and Perle remained standing, their faces lifted to the sky, their bodies unmoving. The storm raged on, the wind howling through the trees, but they stood together, a calm oasis in the midst of the chaos. Then, slowly, as if guided by an invisible force, Fabian reached out to take Perle's hand. Their fingers intertwined, and a jolt of warmth shot through him, chasing away the chill of the rain. Perle turned to him, her eyes shining with a light that seemed to come from within. There was a moment of stillness, where time seemed to pause, and then, without thinking, they began to move. Their movements were slow at first, tentative, like two dancers learning the steps to a new dance. The rain pounded down on them, but it only added to the intensity of the moment, the water dripping from their clothes and streaming down their faces. Fabian could feel the rhythm of the storm in his bones, and he let it guide him as he led Perle in a dance that had no beginning and no end. They moved together as if they had been doing this all their lives, their bodies in perfect harmony with each other and with the elements around them. The world outside the clearing faded away, leaving only the two of them and the storm. The rain was their music, the wind their partner, and they danced as if nothing else mattered. Fabian spun Perle in a wide arc, her wet dress fanning out around her as she twirled. Her laughter, though silent, echoed in his mind, filling him with a joy so pure and so intense that he felt as though his heart might burst. The rain continued to fall, but it was no longer a force of nature. It was part of the dance, part of the connection that bound them together. As they danced, Fabian felt something shift within him. The storm, once a threat, now felt like a blessing, a gift that had brought them closer together. He realized that this was what he had been searching for all along. Not just Perle, but the sense of belonging, of being truly understood by someone else. The dance continued until the storm began to lose its strength, the rain easing into a gentle drizzle. Fabian and Perle slowed their movements, their dance coming to a natural conclusion. They stood still, their foreheads resting against each other, their breathing heavy but in sync. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world that was fresh and new, washed clean by the rain. The clearing around them glistened with droplets, and the air was filled with the scent of wet earth and growing things. Fabian and Perle remained where they were, their hands still clasped, their connection stronger than ever. In the silence that followed, there was no need for words. The dance had said it all, their love, their bond, and their place in the world. As they stood together in the clearing, the storm's final raindrops falling around them, Fabian knew that this was where he was meant to be, with Perle, in a world made new by the rain. Chapter 7. The Secret Garden. The days grew shorter as autumn deepened, the trees shedding their leaves in a brilliant cascade of red, orange, and gold. The town, now cloaked in the quiet beauty of the season, seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the first frost. Fabian felt a growing restlessness within him, a yearning that had become more pronounced with each passing day. The connection between him and Perle had blossomed, but there was something else, something that beckoned him to explore further. One crisp morning, Fabian awoke with a sense of purpose. The air was sharp and cold as he stepped outside, his breath visible in the early light. He followed his instincts, letting them guide him through the familiar streets and out into the countryside beyond the town. His steps were steady, but his heart beat with the excitement of the unknown. As he walked, the landscape gradually changed. The open fields gave way to dense woods, the trees standing tall and bare, their skeletal branches reaching toward the sky. Fabian moved deeper into the forest, the path beneath his feet narrow and overgrown. There was a sense of isolation here, a stillness that pressed in around him, but it didn't deter him. He knew he was on the right track. The path eventually led to a stone wall, half hidden by ivy and moss. It was old, weathered by time and the elements, but still strong and imposing. Fabian ran his fingers over the rough surface, feeling the history embedded in the stones. This wall had stood for generations, guarding something on the other side, something that called to him. He followed the wall until he came to a small, wrought iron gate, its metalwork intricate and delicate, though rusted by age. The gate was slightly ajar, as if inviting him to step through. Without hesitation, Fabian pushed it open, the hinges creaking softly, and entered the hidden world beyond. What he found took his breath away. A secret garden lay before him, untouched by time. The ground was covered in a thick carpet of fallen leaves, but beneath them, he could see the remnants of a once thriving garden. Stone paths wound their way through the space, leading to overgrown flower beds, crumbling statues, and a small, ivy-covered fountain at the center. The air was filled with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a bittersweet reminder of the cycle of life. Fabian walked slowly through the garden, his footsteps barely making a sound. There was an air of mystery here, a sense that this place had been forgotten by the world, yet remained alive in its own quiet way. The plants, though wild and untamed, seemed to have a will of their own, growing in patterns that hinted at the careful planning of a long-gone gardener. As he explored, Fabian's thoughts drifted to Perle. This garden, with its hidden beauty and quiet solitude, reminded him of her. There was a depth to her, a complexity that he had only begun to uncover. Just as this garden had its secrets, so too did Perle, and Fabian felt an intense desire to learn them all. He came to the fountain, its surface covered in a thin layer of green moss. The water had long since stopped flowing, but the stone figure of a woman, carved with exquisite detail, still stood at its center. Her face was serene, her hands outstretched as if offering something to the heavens. Fabian gazed at the statue, feeling a connection to the past, to the hands that had shaped this garden and to the lives that had once filled it with love and care. It was then that he felt her presence. Perle had found him, just as he knew she would. She stood at the entrance to the garden, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the scene before her. Fabian watched her as she stepped forward, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she were afraid to disturb the fragile beauty of the place. They met by the fountain, their hands finding each other's without a word. Together, they stood in silence, taking in the secret garden that had remained hidden from the world for so long. There was something magical about this place, something that spoke to the deepest parts of their souls. It was a sanctuary, a place where time stood still and where their connection could grow without the interference of the outside world. Fabian and Perle wandered through the garden, their fingers lightly brushing the overgrown plants and crumbling statues. They didn't need to speak. The garden itself seemed to communicate with them, sharing its stories and its secrets in the language of the past. Every corner held a new discovery. Every turn revealed a new piece of the puzzle that was their relationship. As the day wore on, the light began to fade, casting long shadows across the garden. Fabian and Perle found a stone bench beneath a large, ancient tree, its branches heavy with the last of the season's leaves. They sat together, side by side, their hands still entwined, and watched as the garden slowly succumbed to the twilight. The world outside the garden was forgotten, lost in the gentle embrace of dusk. Here, in this hidden sanctuary, Fabian and Perle felt closer than ever, their connection deepening with every moment they spent together. The garden, with its beauty and its secrets, had become a part of their story, a place where they could be themselves, free from the constraints of the world. As night fell and the stars began to appear in the sky, Fabian and Perle knew they would return to this place, time and time again. The garden had welcomed them, and they had found something within its walls that could not be put into words. It was a silent promise, a bond that would only grow stronger with time. With a final look at the garden, they rose from the bench and made their way back to the gate. The world outside was waiting for them, but they carried the secret garden in their hearts, a place of quiet beauty and unspoken love that would always be theirs. Chapter 8. The First Snowfall. Winter arrived quietly, slipping into the town with a chill that spread through the air and seeped into every corner. The world seemed to hold its breath as the first snowflakes began to fall, delicate and fleeting, like tiny pieces of lace drifting from the sky. Fabian watched from his window as the snow dusted the rooftops and blanketed the streets in a soft, white layer. There was a purity to the scene, a sense of calm that made the world outside look like a picture frozen in time. He felt a pull to venture out into the snow, to experience the stillness that had settled over the town. Bundling himself in warm layers, he stepped outside, the cold air biting at his cheeks and nose. The snow crunched softly under his boots as he walked, each step leaving a clear imprint in the fresh powder. The town was almost unrecognizable beneath its white covering, the usual hustle and bustle muted by the blanket of snow. Fabian made his way toward the outskirts of town, where the field stretched out wide and open, now transformed into a pristine winter landscape. The sky above was a pale gray, heavy with more snow yet to fall, and the only sound was the gentle whisper of the wind as it played with the snowflakes. When he reached the edge of the forest, Fabian paused, looking out over the landscape. The trees were cloaked in snow, their branches heavy with the weight of winter's first gift. The world felt untouched, as if he were the only person alive in this frozen moment. And then he saw her. Perle was standing in the middle of the field, her figure a small, dark silhouette against the vast expanse of white. She was still, almost as if she were part of the landscape, and the sight of her filled Fabian with a warmth that chased away the cold. He knew that she had come here for the same reason he had, to be part of this quiet, beautiful moment. Fabian moved toward her, his footsteps slow and deliberate, not wanting to disturb the peace that surrounded them. As he drew closer, he could see that Perle was looking up at the sky, watching the snowflakes as they danced down from the heavens. There was a serene expression on her face, one of contentment and wonder, and Fabian felt his heart swell with the depth of his feelings for her. He reached her side, and they stood together in silence, their breath visible in the cold air, their bodies close enough that their warmth mingled. The snow continued to fall around them, settling on their hair and clothes, but they paid no mind. This moment was theirs, a shared experience that needed no words to be understood. As the snow fell, the world around them seemed to blur, the edges of reality softened by the white haze. The field became a place of dreams, where time didn't exist and where the only thing that mattered was the connection they shared. Fabian and Perle moved in sync, as if they were extensions of each other, their movements slow and purposeful. Perle reached out and caught a snowflake on her glove, watching as it melted into nothingness. Fabian followed her lead, lifting his hand to catch a flake of his own. The snowflakes were intricate and unique, tiny miracles that lasted only a moment before disappearing. It reminded him of how fleeting life could be, and yet, how every moment with Perle was a gift he would cherish forever. They began to walk, their steps creating twin paths through the snow. The field stretched on endlessly, and they wandered through it without direction, content to simply be together. The cold didn't touch them. The snow didn't hinder them. They were lost in the magic of the moment, in the quiet intimacy that had grown between them. At some point, they came to a small grove of trees, their branches bare and black against the white sky. The snow had piled up around the trunks, creating small mounds that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. Fabian and Perle stopped here, finding shelter beneath the branches, which swayed gently in the wind. Fabian brushed the snow off a fallen log and sat down, patting the space beside him. Perle joined him, and they sat close, their shoulders touching, their breath mingling in the cold air. The snow continued to fall, muffling the world and making it feel as though they were the only two people in existence. The grove was a haven, a place where the rest of the world could not reach them. The trees stood guard, their branches forming a protective canopy, and the snow created a barrier between them and everything else. Fabian felt as though he and Perle were the only ones who knew this place existed, and that made it even more special. As they sat together, Fabian took Perle's hand in his, their gloves preventing them from feeling the warmth of each other's skin, but it didn't matter. The connection was there, strong and unbreakable, and it filled Fabian with a sense of contentment he had never known before. The snow began to ease, the storm passing as quickly as it had come. The sky brightened, and a few rays of pale sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the landscape. The first snowfall had transformed the world, leaving it new and untouched, a blank canvas for Fabian and Perle to explore. They rose from the log, their hands still clasped, and began to make their way back across the field. The paths they had created earlier were already starting to disappear, the snow covering their tracks as if erasing the evidence of their presence. But Fabian knew that this moment would stay with him forever, etched into his memory like a perfect snowflake. As they walked back toward the town, the world began to stir once more. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the distant sound of voices reached their ears. But Fabian and Perle remained in their own world, connected by the quiet magic of the first snowfall, knowing that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Chapter 9. The candlelit evening. Winter deepened, and with it came the long, dark nights that seemed to stretch on endlessly. The cold settled into every corner of the town, turning it into a quiet, still place where time moved slowly. Fabian found solace in the darkness, the way it wrapped the world in a comforting shroud of silence. The days were short, but the nights held a certain kind of magic, a mystery that called to him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear in the sky, Fabian felt the pull to visit Perle. There was something about the night that made him long for her presence, for the warmth and light she brought into his life. The world outside was cold and silent, but he knew that with her, the night would be transformed into something special. Fabian made his way to Perle's home, the snow crunching softly beneath his boots. The air was sharp, biting at his exposed skin, but he barely noticed. His mind was focused on Perle, on the thought of seeing her again. As he approached her house, he could see the warm glow of candlelight flickering through the windows, casting a golden hue on the snow outside. He knocked gently on the door, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. After a moment, the door opened, and there she was, bathed in the soft light of the candles that illuminated the room behind her. Perle's eyes met his, and without a word, she stepped aside to let him in. The warmth of the room enveloped him as he entered, the scent of beeswax and pine filling his senses. Perle had transformed her home into a haven from the cold, the flickering candles casting dancing shadows on the walls. The room was simple, but the light made it feel alive, filled with a warmth that reached into Fabian's soul. Perle moved gracefully around the room, lighting more candles and adjusting the flames to ensure they burned steadily. Fabian watched her, captivated by the way the light played on her features, highlighting the softness of her expression, the gentle curve of her smile. She seemed at peace here, surrounded by the warmth and light she had created, and Fabian felt a deep sense of contentment just being in her presence. The two of them settled into the room, the only sound the soft crackling of the candles and the occasional pop of the fire in the hearth. Fabian took a seat by the window, where he could see the snow-covered landscape outside, the moonlight reflecting off the white surface, creating a world that seemed to glow from within. Perle joined him, carrying a small tray with a pot of tea and 2 cups. The steam rose from the pot in delicate tendrils, filling the air with the soothing scent of herbs. Fabian watched as she poured the tea, the liquid a deep amber in the candlelight. She handed him a cup, their fingers brushing briefly, and the warmth from the tea spread through him, chasing away the last remnants of the cold. They sat in silence, sipping the tea and watching the night unfold outside the window. The world was quiet, the snow muffling any sound, and it felt as though they were the only 2 people left in existence. The candles burned steadily, their flames casting a soft, golden light over the room, creating an atmosphere that was both intimate and timeless. As the evening wore on, the fire in the hearth slowly died down, leaving behind a bed of glowing embers. The candles continued to burn, their light growing softer, more subdued, as the wicks shortened. Fabian felt a sense of peace settle over him, a feeling that he was exactly where he was meant to be, in this quiet room with Perle, surrounded by the gentle light of the candles. Perle moved closer to him, her presence a comforting warmth at his side. She reached out and took his hand in hers, their fingers intertwining. There was no need for words. The silence between them was filled with understanding, with a connection that ran deeper than anything Fabian had ever known. They sat like that for a long time, their hands clasped, their hearts in sync, as the night deepened around them. The candles slowly began to flicker and fade, their flames growing weaker as they burned down to the last remnants of wax. The room dimmed, the shadows growing longer, but the warmth remained, a testament to the light that had filled the space. Fabian and Perle remained where they were, their hands still joined, their hearts still beating in time with the rhythm of the night. As the last candle flickered out, plunging the room into darkness, Fabian felt Perle squeeze his hand gently, a silent reassurance that she was still there, still with him. The room was dark now, but the memory of the light lingered, a soft glow that would stay with him long after the night had passed. In the darkness, Fabian and Perle sat together, their connection stronger than ever, their love a light that would never fade, even in the deepest night. Chapter 10. The Frozen Lake. The heart of winter had taken hold, and the town was transformed into a wonderland of ice and snow. The landscape sparkled beneath the pale sunlight, the snow-covered ground glittering like a field of diamonds. Fabian and Perle ventured outside, drawn to the serene beauty of a frozen lake that lay just beyond the edge of the forest. The lake, now a vast expanse of ice, stretched out before them, its surface smooth and unblemished, save for the occasional ripple of wind. The surrounding trees were draped in frost, their branches glistening like crystal. The air was crisp and cold, each breath visible as a plume of steam, but it was invigorating, filling them with a sense of wonder and excitement. Fabian and Perle stepped carefully onto the ice, their boots crunching softly as they walked. The surface beneath them was solid, the ice thick and strong, and they moved with a sense of exhilaration. They glided across the frozen lake, their movements fluid and graceful, as if they were part of the winter landscape itself. They reached the center of the lake, where the ice was perfectly clear, revealing the patterns of frost and bubbles trapped beneath the surface. The view was mesmerizing, a delicate tapestry of nature's artistry, and they stood there, taking in the beauty that surrounded them. The silence of the lake was profound, the only sound the faint echo of their footsteps and the gentle whisper of the wind. Fabian watched as Perle twirled on the ice, her movements light and carefree. The ice beneath her seemed to sparkle with every step, as if acknowledging her presence. The sight was enchanting, and Fabian felt a deep sense of joy at witnessing this moment of pure, unrestrained happiness. He joined her, their movements synchronizing as they danced across the frozen lake. They moved together, their steps in harmony, as if they were part of a grand, silent ballet. The ice beneath them creaked softly, but it was a reassuring sound, a reminder of the strength and solidity of the ground they stood on. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the lake. The light turned golden, painting the ice with a warm glow that contrasted with the cold air. Fabian and Perle continued their dance, their shadows stretching out behind them, merging with the patterns on the ice. As they danced, Fabian took a moment to appreciate the stillness of the lake, the way it seemed to hold the entire world within its frozen surface. It was a tranquil, timeless place, where the outside world felt distant and irrelevant. Here, on the ice, Fabian and Perle were completely immersed in the present moment, their connection stronger than ever. The cold began to seep through their clothes, and they decided to take a break. They found a spot near the edge of the lake, where the snow had accumulated into soft mounds. Sitting together, they watched as the sun continued its descent, the sky turning shades of pink and purple, reflecting off the icy surface. Fabian and Perle huddled close, sharing the warmth they had built between them. The lake stretched out before them, a silent witness to their love, its surface gleaming in the fading light. The winter landscape was beautiful, but it was the moments like these, spent together in quiet companionship, that made the experience truly magical. As twilight settled over the lake, the stars began to emerge, their light twinkling in the cold, clear sky. The temperature dropped, and the lake grew darker, but the beauty of the night was undeniable. Fabian and Perle stood up, brushing the snow from their clothes, and began to make their way back to the shore. The walk back was filled with a sense of peace, the stillness of the night enveloping them. The frozen lake lay behind them, a memory of the day they had spent together, and ahead was the warmth of home. Fabian and Perle knew that this day would remain with them, a symbol of their love and the beauty they found in each other. As they left the lake behind, the stars shining brightly overhead, Fabian and Perle walked side by side, their hands clasped together. The world was cold and silent, but within that quiet, they carried the warmth of their shared moments, a reminder of the love that bound them together through the frozen landscape of winter. Chapter 11. The Hidden Meadow. Winter was well established, and the town seemed to be in a deep, slumbering state, covered in a blanket of snow. The trees stood bare, their branches coated with frost, and the air was filled with the crisp, invigorating chill of the season. Fabian and Perle felt a sense of adventure, driven by the desire to explore beyond the familiar paths they had walked before. One morning, with the sun casting a pale light over the snow-covered landscape, they set out on a new journey. Fabian had heard rumors of a hidden meadow, a place that was said to be a secret haven even in the depths of winter. They followed a trail that led them through the forest, their boots crunching through the snow as they made their way. The forest was quiet, the only sounds the gentle rustling of the wind and the occasional creak of snow-laden branches. Fabian and Perle navigated the winding path, their breath visible in the cold air. The journey took them deeper into the woods, where the trees grew denser and the snow lay thick on the ground. As they walked, the light began to change, the pale morning sun giving way to a softer, more diffuse light that filtered through the trees. Fabian and Perle pushed on, driven by curiosity and the promise of discovering something new. The trail grew fainter, the snow-covered path almost indistinguishable from the surrounding forest, but they pressed forward, guided by a sense of purpose. After what felt like hours of walking, they emerged from the forest and found themselves in a clearing. The sight before them was breathtaking. A hidden meadow, untouched by the world, and bathed in the soft glow of the winter sun. The snow-covered ground was dotted with patches of evergreen plants, their dark green needles a striking contrast against the white expanse. The meadow was a tranquil oasis, encircled by a ring of tall trees that formed a natural barrier. The space was open and inviting, a perfect haven where the outside world seemed to fade away. Fabian and Perle stood at the edge of the clearing, taking in the serene beauty of the place. The air was still and calm, filled with a sense of peace that made the hidden meadow feel like a secret world of its own. They stepped into the meadow, their footsteps leaving impressions in the untouched snow. The ground was soft and yielding, and the snow sparkled in the sunlight, creating a magical effect. Fabian and Perle wandered through the clearing, their movements slow and deliberate, savoring the feeling of being in this special place. They came across a small, frozen pond in the center of the meadow. The surface of the pond was covered in a thin layer of ice, and the snow around it was undisturbed, save for the occasional track of a small animal. Fabian and Perle approached the pond, marveling at the delicate patterns that had formed on the ice. The colors of the winter light reflected off the surface, creating a shimmering effect that was both captivating and calming. As they continued their exploration, Fabian and Perle discovered a grove of young, snow-covered saplings at the far side of the meadow. The trees were slender and delicate, their branches heavy with snow. The grove had a magical quality, as if it were a sacred place where nature's beauty was preserved and cherished. Fabian and Perle spent hours in the hidden meadow, their hearts light and their spirits lifted by the beauty of their surroundings. They built a small snow fort, their laughter and playful shouts echoing through the clearing, a testament to the joy they found in each other's company. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the snow, Fabian and Perle knew it was time to leave. They took one last look at the hidden meadow, their hearts full of the peace and tranquility they had found there. The meadow would remain their secret haven, a place they could return to whenever they needed to escape the world and reconnect with each other. They made their way back through the forest, the light fading and the cold deepening. The journey was quiet, the serenity of the meadow still lingering in their minds. Fabian and Perle walked side by side, their hands clasped together, knowing that the hidden meadow had become a cherished part of their story, a symbol of the beauty and love they shared. Chapter 12. The Ice Sculpture Garden. Winter's hold on the town grew deeper, and with it, the icy beauty of the season became even more pronounced. The days were short, and the nights were long and cold, but the world outside was transformed into a shimmering wonderland of ice and snow. Fabian and Perle felt drawn to the town's annual ice sculpture garden, an event that turned the town square into an exhibition of frozen artistry. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a deep shade of blue, Fabian and Perle made their way to the town square. The square was a bustling place, filled with people admiring the intricate ice sculptures that had been crafted over the past few weeks. The sculptures ranged from delicate, swirling patterns to grand, imposing figures, each one a testament to the skill and creativity of the local artists. Fabian and Perle walked hand in hand, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. The town square was illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns and streetlights, their light reflecting off the ice and casting a warm, golden hue across the sculptures. The air was filled with the soft murmur of voices and the occasional burst of laughter, creating a lively but pleasant atmosphere. They began their exploration, moving from one sculpture to the next, taking in the details and admiring the craftsmanship. Each sculpture was unique, frozen into intricate shapes that captured the essence of winter in stunning ways. Some were abstract, with twisting lines and geometric patterns, while others depicted scenes from nature, such as frozen waterfalls and ice-covered trees. As they wandered through the garden, Fabian and Perle stopped to marvel at a particularly elaborate sculpture. A majestic ice dragon, its wings outstretched and its scales glistening in the light. The dragon was intricately carved, with each detail perfectly captured, and it seemed almost alive, as if it might take flight at any moment. They continued on, their path taking them past sculptures of mythical creatures and fantastical scenes. One sculpture depicted a frozen forest, with delicate ice branches reaching out like the limbs of ancient trees. Another was a magnificent ice castle, complete with turrets and spires, its translucent walls creating a magical, ethereal effect. Fabian and Perle found themselves drawn to a small, secluded corner of the garden where a collection of ice lanterns had been set up. Each lantern was crafted from ice and held a single candle, casting a soft, flickering light that created a tranquil and enchanting atmosphere. The lanterns were arranged in a circular pattern, forming a pathway that led to a central sculpture of a delicate, crystalline snowflake. The snowflake sculpture was exquisite, its intricate design capturing the unique beauty of each individual flake. The light from the lanterns danced across its surface, creating a mesmerizing display of glimmering reflections. Fabian and Perle stood together, their eyes fixed on the snowflake, feeling a deep sense of wonder and appreciation for the artistry that surrounded them. As they made their way back through the garden, the cold began to seep into their clothes, but they hardly noticed. The beauty of the ice sculptures and the shared experience of exploring the garden kept them warm and connected. They lingered near a large ice fountain, its water frozen into delicate, cascading icicles that sparkled in the light. The night grew darker, and the lanterns and streetlights continued to cast their soft glow over the sculptures. Fabian and Perle took one last look around the garden, their hearts filled with the beauty and magic of the evening. The ice sculpture garden had become a special memory, a celebration of winter's artistry and a testament to the love they shared. They left the town square, their steps slow and deliberate, as if reluctant to leave behind the enchantment of the garden. The cold night air greeted them as they stepped outside, but it felt invigorating, a reminder of the winter wonderland they had just experienced. As they walked away from the town square, Fabian and Perle held hands tightly, their fingers intertwined. The ice sculpture garden had been a perfect setting for their shared moments, and it would forever be a part of their story, a symbol of the beauty they found in each other and in the world around them. Chapter 13. The Starlit Cabin. The deep winter night brought with it a clear sky, revealing a stunning tapestry of stars that stretched endlessly above the town. The crisp, cold air was filled with the promise of adventure and the magic of the season. Fabian and Perle decided to escape the bustling town and seek out a more secluded retreat, a cozy cabin they had heard about from a local innkeeper. They set out under the starry sky, the snow crunching softly beneath their boots as they made their way through the quiet forest. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches heavy with snow, and the only sound was the gentle whisper of the wind. The cold was invigorating, and the beauty of the night sky made the journey feel like a magical adventure. After a while, they reached the cabin, nestled among the trees and partially hidden by a blanket of snow. The cabin was quaint and charming, with a thatched roof and stone chimney that suggested a warm and inviting interior. The soft glow of lanterns inside the cabin filtered through the windows, promising a haven of warmth and comfort. Fabian and Perle approached the cabin, their footsteps muffled by the snow. As they reached the door, they noticed that it had been left slightly ajar, allowing the faintest hint of light and warmth to escape into the cold night. They stepped inside, and the cabin embraced them with its cozy atmosphere, the warmth immediately melting away the chill from outside. The interior of the cabin was a charming blend of rustic and comfortable. A crackling fire burned in the stone fireplace, casting a warm, flickering light that danced across the wooden walls and furniture. The room was filled with the pleasant scent of burning logs and a hint of pine, creating a soothing and inviting environment. Fabian and Perle settled into the cabin, taking off their snowy outer layers and warming themselves by the fire. They could see through the large windows that framed the room, the starlit sky stretching out above the snow-covered landscape. The view was breathtaking, with the stars twinkling brightly against the dark, clear sky, and the snow-covered ground reflecting the light in a magical glow. They spent the evening in quiet relaxation, wrapped in the comfort of the cabin. Fabian took a seat in one of the large, cushioned armchairs near the fire, while Perle curled up on a nearby sofa, a soft throw blanket draped over her shoulders. The fire crackled and popped, its warmth filling the room and creating a soothing backdrop to their tranquil night. The night outside was still and silent, the stars shining brightly and casting a gentle light over the snow-covered landscape. Fabian and Perle enjoyed the peaceful solitude, the beauty of the night sky providing a perfect complement to the cozy warmth of the cabin. They took turns gazing out the window, their hearts full of the serenity and wonder that the night inspired. As the evening wore on, the fire began to die down, leaving behind a bed of glowing embers. Fabian and Perle decided to venture outside once more, drawn by the allure of the starlit night. They bundled up in warm clothing and stepped out into the crisp, cold air. The cabin's exterior was just as enchanting as its interior. The snow-covered roof and the twinkling lights from the windows created a picture-perfect winter scene. Fabian and Perle walked through the snow, their footsteps leaving a trail behind them. The world was bathed in the soft light of the stars, and the snow sparkled like a field of diamonds under the night sky. They walked hand in hand, their breath visible in the cold air, and found a small hill nearby that offered a panoramic view of the surrounding landscape. They climbed to the top and stood together, taking in the breathtaking sight. The forest stretched out below them, its trees covered in snow, and the town in the distance was a collection of twinkling lights. The stars above seemed to shine even more brightly, their brilliance intensified by the clear, cold air. Fabian and Perle felt a deep sense of awe and connection, the beauty of the night sky reflecting the warmth they felt for each other. They stood together in silence, embracing the tranquility and wonder of the moment. As the night grew colder, they made their way back to the cabin, their hearts full of the magic they had experienced. The cabin awaited them, a warm and welcoming retreat from the winter night. They settled back inside, the fire crackling softly and the cabin's cozy interior enveloping them in comfort. Fabian and Perle spent the rest of the night by the fire, their hearts full of the beauty and serenity of the starlit evening. The cabin, with its warmth and charm, had become a cherished part of their story, a symbol of the love and connection they shared amidst the winter's cold. Chapter 14. The Snowbound Library. Winter's grip on the town continued, and with it came the occasional snowstorm that blanketed the streets and covered the town in a thick layer of snow. On one particularly snowy afternoon, Fabian and Perle decided to explore a different corner of their world, a grand old library that had been a quiet, forgotten gem amid the snowy landscape. The library stood at the edge of town, its imposing facade and tall, arched windows giving it a sense of timeless grandeur. As they approached, Fabian and Perle marveled at the way the snow had transformed the library into a fairy tale structure, the snow-covered roof and the icicles hanging from the eaves adding to its enchanting appearance. They pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped inside, leaving the cold winter air behind. The warmth of the library enveloped them immediately, a welcome contrast to the icy chill outside. The library's interior was just as majestic as its exterior, with high ceilings, ornate woodwork, and rows upon rows of bookshelves that reached up to the very top of the room. The library was quiet, the only sound the soft echo of their footsteps on the marble floor. The air was filled with the faint, comforting smell of old books and polished wood. Fabian and Perle wandered through the library, their eyes wandering over the vast array of books and the intricate details of the architecture. They came across a reading nook tucked away in a corner of the library. It was a cozy alcove with large, plush armchairs and a roaring fireplace that provided a warm and inviting glow. The nook was lined with bookshelves filled with volumes of every kind, from classic literature to forgotten tomes. The fire crackled softly, adding a comforting soundtrack to their exploration. Fabian and Perle settled into the armchairs, feeling the comfort of the library's warmth. They picked up a few books from the shelves, their fingers tracing the spines and the intricate designs that adorned them. Each book held its own story, and the act of browsing through the titles was a pleasure in itself, a quiet escape from the outside world. They spent hours in the reading nook, flipping through the pages of the books and exploring the library's treasures. The snowstorm outside continued to fall, its presence barely audible through the thick walls of the library. The view from the large windows was a picturesque scene of swirling snowflakes, creating a sense of isolation and tranquility. After some time, Fabian and Perle ventured out from the reading nook and explored other areas of the library. They found a spiral staircase that led to a second floor, where additional bookshelves and reading areas awaited. The staircase creaked softly under their weight, and the view from the upper level was even more breathtaking, the library's grandeur fully revealed. The second floor featured large windows that provided a panoramic view of the snow-covered landscape outside. The snow had created a blanket over the town, turning the streets and rooftops into a pristine white canvas. Fabian and Perle gazed out at the scene, the quiet beauty of the snow-covered world stretching out before them. As the afternoon wore on, the light outside began to fade, casting a soft, golden glow over the library's interior. The fireplace continued to provide warmth and light, creating a cozy and intimate atmosphere. Fabian and Perle felt a deep sense of contentment, the library's quiet beauty and the warmth of the fire providing a perfect retreat from the cold, snowy world outside. The library had become a sanctuary, a place where time seemed to stand still, and the outside world was forgotten. Fabian and Perle continued to explore the shelves and reading areas, their hearts full of the peace and tranquility they had found within the library's walls. As the evening approached and the snowstorm showed no signs of letting up, they reluctantly decided to leave the library. They gathered their belongings, their hearts heavy with the thought of leaving behind such a special place. The library, with its warmth and charm, had become a cherished memory, a symbol of the beauty and comfort they had found together. They stepped back into the snowy evening, the cold air a sharp contrast to the warmth they had just left. The town was covered in a blanket of snow, the streets and buildings transformed into a winter wonderland. Fabian and Perle walked side by side, their hearts full of the memories they had created in the library, knowing that the experience would stay with them long after the snow had melted. Chapter 15. The Midnight Forest. The winter night was at its coldest, and the sky was a blanket of stars, each one twinkling in the clear, dark expanse. Fabian and Perle, driven by a sense of adventure and curiosity, decided to embark on a midnight walk through the forest that bordered the town. The moonlight cast a silvery glow over the snow-covered trees, transforming the landscape into a scene of ethereal beauty. They stepped outside, the air crisp and biting against their cheeks, and began their walk toward the forest. The snow crunched softly under their boots, and their breath formed delicate clouds in the frigid air. The town was quiet, its usual sounds muffled by the thick layer of snow. As they entered the forest, the world seemed to change. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches heavy with snow. The moonlight filtered through the canopy, creating a magical play of light and shadow on the forest floor. The path they followed was narrow, winding through the dense trees and illuminated by the soft glow of the moon. The forest was peaceful, a serene sanctuary away from the bustling town. Fabian and Perle walked slowly, their footsteps light and deliberate. The snow-covered ground was dotted with the occasional animal track, evidence of the forest's nocturnal inhabitants. The trees, draped in snow, created a cathedral-like effect, their branches forming intricate patterns against the night sky. They came upon a small clearing, a quiet space where the snow-covered ground was untouched and pristine. The clearing was bathed in moonlight, and the snow sparkled like a field of diamonds. Fabian and Perle paused, taking in the tranquility of the scene. The clearing felt like a hidden treasure, a secret place where time seemed to stand still. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient, gnarled tree, its branches reaching out like twisted, skeletal fingers. The tree was adorned with icicles that hung from its limbs, catching the moonlight and casting a soft, shimmering glow. Fabian and Perle approached the tree, their footsteps crunching softly in the snow. They marveled at the beauty of the tree, its age and strength evident in its twisted form. The icicles hanging from its branches created a magical effect, their delicate shapes reflecting the moonlight in a mesmerizing display. Fabian and Perle stood in awe, the quiet beauty of the forest and the tree filling them with a deep sense of wonder. As they continued their walk, the moon began its descent, casting long shadows across the snow-covered ground. The forest was still and silent, the only sound the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. The night was serene, and the cold air felt invigorating, adding to the sense of adventure and discovery. Fabian and Perle came upon a small stream that wound its way through the forest. The water was partially frozen, its surface covered with a thin layer of ice. The stream meandered through the snow-covered landscape, its gentle flow creating a soothing, rhythmic sound that added to the tranquility of the night. They followed the stream for a short distance, their path illuminated by the soft glow of the moonlight. The stream led them to a small bridge, its wooden planks covered with a layer of snow. Fabian and Perle crossed the bridge, their footsteps leaving impressions in the snow. On the other side of the bridge, the forest opened up to another clearing, this one even more enchanting than the first. The clearing was framed by snow-covered trees, and the moonlight created a magical, otherworldly glow. Fabian and Perle stood at the edge of the clearing, taking in the breathtaking beauty of the scene. The night wore on, and the moon continued its journey across the sky. Fabian and Perle made their way back through the forest, their hearts full of the peace and wonder they had experienced. The midnight forest had become a cherished memory, a symbol of the quiet beauty and magic they had found together. As they emerged from the forest and the town came into view, Fabian and Perle felt a sense of contentment. The cold night air was invigorating, and the memories of their midnight adventure filled them with warmth. They walked back to their home, their hands clasped together, knowing that the experience would remain a special part of their story. Chapter 16. The Winter Carnival. The Winter Carnival had arrived in town, transforming the central square into a lively and colorful celebration of the season. Stalls and tents were set up, adorned with twinkling lights and festive decorations. The air was filled with the joyful sounds of laughter, music, and the occasional cheer, creating a vibrant and exhilarating atmosphere. Fabian and Perle made their way to the carnival, their steps light with anticipation. The square was bustling with activity, and the scent of roasted chestnuts, sweet pastries, and mulled cider wafted through the air. The carnival was a tapestry of bright colors and sparkling lights, a joyful escape from the cold winter nights. They began their exploration at the various stalls and attractions that lined the square. The first stop was a carousel, its brightly painted horses and whimsical design evoking a sense of nostalgia and wonder. Fabian and Perle watched as children and adults alike enjoyed the spinning ride, their faces alight with happiness. Next, they wandered over to a booth where ice sculptors were at work, their chisels and tools creating intricate designs from blocks of ice. The sculptures ranged from fantastical creatures to elegant, abstract forms, each one a testament to the skill and artistry of the sculptors. Fabian and Perle marveled at the detail and craftsmanship, their eyes following the transformation of ice into art. The carnival also featured a skating rink, its surface glistening under the lights. Skaters glided gracefully across the ice, their movements creating elegant patterns and trails. Fabian and Perle decided to join in, donning skates and stepping onto the rink. They moved cautiously at first, but soon found their rhythm, enjoying the sensation of gliding across the ice. As they skated, they admired the festive decorations that adorned the rink, including strings of lights and snowflake-shaped ornaments. The rink was surrounded by wooden cabins offering hot drinks and snacks, adding to the cozy and inviting atmosphere. Fabian and Perle took a break to warm up with steaming mugs of hot chocolate, their hands wrapped around the cups as they enjoyed the warmth. They continued their exploration of the carnival, discovering a variety of attractions and activities. There were games of chance and skill, with colorful prizes on display. Fabian and Perle tried their hand at a few games, their faces lighting up with delight as they won small trinkets and stuffed animals. One of the highlights of the carnival was a dazzling fireworks display that lit up the night sky. Fabian and Perle found a spot on the edge of the square, their eyes fixed on the sky as the fireworks burst into vibrant colors. The display was a breathtaking spectacle, with each explosion of light and color reflecting off the snow-covered ground. As the fireworks show came to an end, the carnival continued to buzz with energy and excitement. Fabian and Perle took a leisurely stroll through the square, taking in the festive atmosphere and the cheerful faces of the people around them. The lights of the carnival cast a warm, golden glow, creating a magical ambience that filled the night with joy. The carnival was a celebration of winter's beauty and the spirit of togetherness, and Fabian and Perle felt a deep sense of happiness and contentment. The experience was a cherished addition to their story, a reminder of the joy and magic that could be found even in the coldest of seasons. As the night wore on and the carnival began to wind down, Fabian and Perle made their way back through the snow-covered streets. The town was quiet once more, but the memories of the carnival filled them with warmth and cheer. They walked side by side, their hearts full of the joy and wonder they had experienced, knowing that the winter carnival would be a treasured part of their shared journey. Chapter 17. The Hidden Garden. As winter deepened, Fabian and Perle sought refuge from the cold by discovering hidden gems around their town. On a crisp morning, with the sun casting a soft, golden light over the snow-covered landscape, they decided to explore an old, overgrown path they had heard about but never ventured down. The path began at the edge of the town, leading them through a small, wrought-iron gate partially concealed by vines and snow. The gate creaked softly as they pushed it open, revealing a narrow, winding trail that disappeared into a dense thicket of trees and shrubs. The air was fresh and invigorating, and the snow crunched underfoot as they stepped onto the path. The trail meandered through a wintry woodland, with tall, leafless trees standing like silent sentinels. The snow-covered branches created a canopy above them, filtering the sunlight into soft, diffused beams that danced on the ground. The world was hushed, save for the occasional sound of a distant bird or the gentle rustling of the wind through the trees. After walking for some time, the path opened up into a secluded clearing. Fabian and Perle found themselves in a hidden garden, a serene and enchanting space that seemed untouched by the outside world. The garden was surrounded by a high stone wall, its surface covered in ivy and moss. The snow-covered ground was dotted with patches of evergreen shrubs and trees, their dark green foliage contrasting beautifully with the white snow. In the center of the garden stood a large, ornate fountain, its basin filled with snow and ice. The fountain's stone statues were adorned with delicate icicles, their frozen forms catching the light and creating a shimmering effect. The sound of water, frozen into an icy silence, added a peaceful stillness to the garden. Fabian and Perle wandered through the garden, taking in the beauty of the hidden oasis. They discovered a variety of sculptures and statues nestled among the snow-covered plants, each one a piece of art that added to the garden's charm. The statues ranged from classical figures to whimsical creatures, their forms partially obscured by the snow. They came upon a small gazebo at one corner of the garden, its wooden structure draped in icicles and snow. The gazebo provided a cozy vantage point from which to admire the garden's splendor. Fabian and Perle took a moment to sit and rest, their eyes taking in the tranquil scene that surrounded them. The garden's charm was further enhanced by the soft, golden light of the winter sun. The sunlight filtered through the trees and cast long, gentle shadows across the snow-covered ground. The effect was magical, transforming the garden into a serene and otherworldly space. Fabian and Perle continued their exploration, discovering a small pond that was partially frozen over. The surface of the pond was covered with a delicate layer of ice, its edges fringed with frost. The reflections of the trees and sky on the ice created a beautiful, abstract pattern. As they walked back toward the gate, they took one last look at the hidden garden, their hearts full of the serenity and beauty they had experienced. The garden had been a secret world, a tranquil escape from the outside hustle and bustle, and it had become a cherished part of their journey. They left the garden and retraced their steps along the path, the snow crunching softly beneath their boots. The world outside the garden felt different now, touched by the magic and tranquility of the hidden space they had discovered. Fabian and Perle walked hand in hand, their hearts full of the peaceful memories they had created in the hidden garden, knowing it would remain a special part of their story. Chapter 18. The Lantern Festival. The town was abuzz with excitement as preparations for the Lantern Festival began. The annual event was a highlight of the winter season, where residents gathered to celebrate with a display of colorful lanterns that lit up the night sky. Fabian and Perle eagerly anticipated the festival, looking forward to the enchanting spectacle. As twilight descended, the town square transformed into a vibrant sea of lights. Lanterns of all shapes and sizes were being assembled and hung from strings that crisscrossed above the square. The lanterns were crafted from colorful paper and silk, each one featuring intricate designs and patterns that reflected the creativity of the townspeople. Fabian and Perle arrived at the square as the first lanterns were being lit. The soft glow of the lanterns created a warm and magical atmosphere, casting a gentle light over the snow-covered ground. The square was filled with the pleasant aroma of street food, and the sound of cheerful music played in the background, adding to the festive ambience. They wandered through the square, admiring the array of lanterns that adorned the space. Some lanterns were shaped like animals, others like flowers or celestial bodies. Each lantern was a unique piece of art, and together they created a breathtaking display of color and light. Fabian and Perle marveled at the craftsmanship and the way the lanterns illuminated the night with their vibrant hues. The centerpiece of the festival was a large, floating lantern that would be released at the end of the evening. The lantern was adorned with intricate patterns and had a soft, golden glow. Fabian and Perle watched as the lantern was carefully prepared and positioned for its release. The excitement among the crowd was palpable, and the atmosphere was filled with anticipation. As night fell, the town square became even more magical. The lanterns seemed to come alive, their colors dancing and shifting as they swayed gently in the breeze. Fabian and Perle found themselves enchanted by the display, their faces illuminated by the soft light of the lanterns. They joined in the festivities, participating in various activities such as making their own lanterns. They worked together at a crafting station, where they decorated paper lanterns with vibrant colors and designs. The activity was a joyful and creative way to contribute to the festival, and they took pride in their handiwork. As the evening progressed, the time came for the release of the large floating lantern. The crowd gathered around, their eyes fixed on the lantern as it was lifted into the air. The lantern floated upward, its glow becoming more radiant as it ascended. Fabian and Perle watched in awe as the lantern rose higher and higher, eventually joining the constellation of smaller lanterns that dotted the night sky. The floating lantern slowly drifted away, its light a beacon of hope and celebration. The sight was both mesmerizing and poignant, symbolizing the collective spirit and joy of the festival. Fabian and Perle stood together, their hearts full of the beauty and magic of the moment. As the Lantern Festival drew to a close, the town square began to empty, but the memory of the night lingered. Fabian and Perle walked back through the snowy streets, their path illuminated by the gentle glow of the lanterns that still adorned the square. The experience had been a cherished addition to their journey, a reminder of the warmth and wonder that could be found in the simplest of celebrations. They made their way home, the cold air refreshing and the memories of the festival filling them with a deep sense of contentment. The Lantern Festival had been a magical celebration, a testament to the beauty of winter and the joy of shared experiences. Fabian and Perle knew that the memories of the festival would remain a cherished part of their story, a glowing highlight in their shared journey. Chapter 19. The Winter Solstice. The winter solstice marked the shortest day of the year and the beginning of the slow return of longer daylight. In the town, the solstice was a time for quiet reflection and appreciation of the turning seasons. Fabian and Perle embraced the occasion with a serene, introspective walk through the snow-covered countryside. As dawn broke, the sky was painted with hues of pale pink and soft orange. The first light of the day gently illuminated the snow-covered landscape, creating a tranquil and breathtaking scene. Fabian and Perle dressed warmly and ventured out into the crisp morning air, their breath visible in the cold. They followed a path that led them to a small, secluded forest on the edge of town. The trees stood tall and silent, their bare branches reaching skyward in quiet elegance. The snow on the ground was pristine and undisturbed, save for the faint tracks left by woodland creatures. The world felt still and peaceful, as if holding its breath in anticipation of the solstice. The forest path wound through the trees, eventually opening up to a serene glade. In the center of the glade was a large, flat stone, partially covered with snow. Fabian and Perle approached the stone, its surface glistening in the early morning light. They took a moment to sit on the stone, gazing at the surrounding beauty. The solstice brought a sense of renewal and hope. Fabian and Perle observed the subtle changes in the landscape as the sun rose higher in the sky. The shadows grew shorter, and the light began to penetrate deeper into the forest, casting a warm glow on the snow-covered ground. As the day progressed, they explored the forest further, discovering small frozen streams and glistening icicles hanging from the branches. The ice formations were delicate and intricate, their shapes and patterns reflecting the light in a dazzling display. Fabian and Perle marveled at the natural artistry of the ice, its beauty a testament to the quiet power of winter. They continued their walk, eventually coming to a small, frozen pond. The surface of the pond was covered with a thick layer of ice, its smooth expanse interrupted only by the occasional ripple from beneath. The pond was surrounded by snow-covered reeds and trees, creating a picturesque and serene setting. Fabian and Perle stood at the edge of the pond, taking in the stillness of the scene. The ice reflected the pale winter sun, creating a shimmering effect that added to the pond's ethereal beauty. They felt a deep sense of connection to the natural world, their hearts full of the peace and tranquility that the solstice had brought. As the sun began its descent, casting a golden hue over the landscape, Fabian and Perle made their way back to the edge of town. The sky was a brilliant canvas of colors, deep blues and purples mingling with the fading orange light. The sunset marked the end of the solstice day and the beginning of the gradual return of longer days. They returned to their home, the cold air invigorating and the memories of their solstice walk filling them with a profound sense of contentment. The winter solstice had been a time for reflection and appreciation, a moment to celebrate the quiet beauty of the season and the promise of the returning light. As the evening settled in and the stars began to appear in the night sky, Fabian and Perle looked forward to the days ahead, knowing that the solstice had marked a turning point in their journey. The experience had deepened their connection to each other and to the world around them, leaving them with a renewed sense of hope and wonder. Chapter 20. The Echoes of the Past. The days following the winter solstice were marked by a sense of calm and reflection. Fabian and Perle decided to explore an old, historical part of town, a place that held echoes of the past and stories long forgotten. Their journey led them to an old, abandoned mansion at the edge of town, a place rich with history and intrigue. The mansion stood atop a gentle hill, its once grand facade now weathered and worn. The tall, ornate windows were dusty and cracked, and the ivy that had once adorned the walls now climbed up in tangled, overgrown masses. Despite its dilapidated state, the mansion exuded an air of faded elegance, hinting at the splendor it had once known. Fabian and Perle approached the mansion with a sense of reverence, their footsteps crunching softly on the snow-covered path leading to the front entrance. The large, wooden doors were partially ajar, revealing a glimpse of the mansion's interior. They pushed the doors open and stepped inside, the air cool and musty with the scent of age. The foyer was expansive, with a grand staircase sweeping up to the second floor. The marble floor was covered in a layer of dust, and the once splendid chandelier hung low, its crystals catching the faint light that filtered through the dirty windows. Fabian and Perle moved through the foyer, their eyes taking in the remnants of the mansion's former glory. They explored room after room, each one offering a glimpse into the past. The dining room, with its long, dust-covered table and ornate chairs, seemed frozen in time. The remnants of a once opulent dinner party lay scattered across the table, plates, silverware, and a tarnished candelabrum, all covered in a thick layer of dust. In the library, tall bookshelves lined the walls, filled with ancient, leather-bound volumes. The books were covered in a thick layer of dust, and the once rich, dark wood of the shelves was faded and cracked. Fabian and Perle carefully examined the books, their fingers tracing the embossed titles and the intricate woodwork. They wandered into the ballroom, a grand space with a high ceiling and large, arched windows. The wooden floor was scuffed and scratched, and the walls were adorned with faded, peeling wallpaper. Despite the decay, the room still held a sense of grandeur, its beauty evident even in its neglected state. The mansion also had a series of smaller rooms that had once been bedrooms, now empty and forlorn. The furniture was old and worn, and the once elegant drapes were tattered and hanging askew. Fabian and Perle found old portraits hanging on the walls, their frames ornate but covered in dust. The portraits depicted people from a bygone era, their expressions frozen in time. As they explored the mansion, they came across a small, hidden alcove behind a large, dusty curtain. Inside the alcove was a collection of old photographs and letters, carefully preserved in a wooden box. Fabian and Perle carefully examined the contents, their eyes scanning the faded images and handwritten notes. The photographs depicted scenes of everyday life from the mansion's past, and the letters told stories of the people who had once lived there. The mansion's attic was a treasure trove of forgotten items. Old trunks and boxes were stacked haphazardly, their contents a mix of clothes, toys, and mementos from the past. Fabian and Perle sifted through the items, finding old-fashioned clothing, delicate trinkets, and faded maps of the town. As the day drew to a close, the light outside began to fade, casting a soft, golden glow over the mansion. The shadows grew longer, and the atmosphere in the mansion became even more evocative of the past. Fabian and Perle took one last look around, their hearts full of the stories and memories they had unearthed. They left the mansion, the cold evening air a sharp contrast to the warmth of the memories they had discovered. The echoes of the past had come alive for them, and they felt a deep sense of connection to the history of the town and the lives that had once inhabited the mansion. Walking back through the snow-covered streets, Fabian and Perle reflected on the experience. The mansion had been a window into a different time, and the echoes of the past had enriched their journey, adding a layer of depth and understanding to their shared story. Chapter 21: The Hidden Lake. As winter continued to unfold, Fabian and Perle sought new adventures to explore. One crisp morning, they decided to venture beyond the familiar boundaries of town, following an old, winding trail that led them deep into the surrounding woods. The trail had long been rumored to lead to a hidden lake, a place said to be untouched and serene. The forest was silent and still, the only sounds the crunch of snow underfoot and the occasional rustle of branches in the wind. The trees were blanketed in snow, their bare branches reaching out like skeletal arms. The path through the woods was narrow, and the snow was deep, but Fabian and Perle pressed on, their hearts filled with anticipation. After walking for some time, they reached a small clearing. At the center of the clearing was a wooden sign, weathered and covered in snow. The sign pointed in the direction of the hidden lake, its faded letters barely legible. Fabian and Perle followed the sign, moving cautiously as they navigated the uneven terrain. The trail led them through dense woods and over a small, frozen stream. The ice on the stream was thick and clear, with delicate frost patterns etched into its surface. Fabian and Perle paused to admire the intricate designs, their breath forming clouds in the chilly air. As they continued along the trail, the forest began to open up, and the sound of water became more distinct. The trees thinned out, revealing a vast expanse of snow-covered ground. In the distance, they could see the glimmer of the hidden lake, its surface partially frozen and sparkling in the winter sunlight. They reached the edge of the lake, its icy surface reflecting the light like a mirror. The lake was surrounded by snow-covered hills and trees, creating a picturesque and secluded setting. The air was crisp and fresh, and the only sounds were the gentle creaking of the ice and the occasional call of a distant bird. Fabian and Perle walked along the shore of the lake, their footsteps leaving tracks in the snow. The ice on the lake was thick and safe, and they carefully ventured onto its surface. The ice was clear in places, allowing them to see the patterns and textures beneath. Small bubbles and air pockets were trapped in the ice, creating a mesmerizing effect. They found a spot on the lake where the ice was particularly smooth, and they decided to sit and take in the beauty of the scene. The lake was a tranquil oasis, its stillness a stark contrast to the bustling world of town. The snow-covered landscape and the frozen surface of the lake created a serene and otherworldly atmosphere. As they sat by the lake, they noticed the subtle changes in light and color as the sun moved across the sky. The ice reflected a range of hues, from deep blues to soft pinks, depending on the angle of the light. Fabian and Perle watched as the colors shifted, their eyes taking in the ever-changing beauty of the frozen lake. They spent the day exploring the lake and its surroundings, discovering small, hidden coves and ice formations. The landscape was a wonderland of snow and ice, with each new discovery adding to the sense of magic and wonder. The hidden lake had become a cherished part of their journey, a place of quiet reflection and awe. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the landscape, Fabian and Perle made their way back to the edge of the forest. The sky was a canvas of vibrant colors, and the first stars began to appear in the twilight. The hidden lake had been a perfect escape from the ordinary, a place where they could connect with nature and each other. They returned to town, their hearts full of the serenity and beauty they had experienced. The hidden lake had added a new layer of wonder to their journey, and they knew that the memories of their adventure would stay with them forever. As they walked through the snowy streets, they felt a deep sense of gratitude for the hidden treasures they had discovered and the bond they had strengthened along the way. Chapter 22. The Enchanted Forest. With the deepening of winter, Fabian and Perle yearned for another adventure. This time, their curiosity led them to a part of the forest that had always seemed shrouded in mystery. Local legends spoke of the Enchanted Forest, a place where magic was said to linger and the ordinary became extraordinary. On a frosty morning, Fabian and Perle set out for the Enchanted Forest, following a less-traveled path that wound through the woods. The air was crisp and the sky a pale, wintry blue. The trees around them were heavy with snow, and the ground was blanketed in a thick layer of white. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the trees grew denser, their branches intertwining to form a natural canopy. The snow-covered ground was undisturbed, save for the occasional footprint of a wandering animal. The forest was eerily quiet, creating a sense of both anticipation and wonder. After some time, they arrived at a clearing unlike any they had seen before. The clearing was bathed in a soft, ethereal light that seemed to come from within the forest itself. The light illuminated the snow, creating a shimmering effect that made the entire area appear magical. In the center of the clearing was a large, ancient tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted. The tree was adorned with icicles that glistened in the light, and its branches were draped with delicate frost. The sight was enchanting, and Fabian and Perle felt as though they had stepped into a fairy tale. They wandered through the clearing, their steps careful and deliberate as they took in the otherworldly beauty of their surroundings. The snow on the ground sparkled like diamonds, and the air was filled with a faint, sweet scent that added to the forest's enchantment. As they explored further, they discovered a small, frozen pond nestled at the edge of the clearing. The surface of the pond was covered in a delicate layer of ice, with intricate frost patterns forming mesmerizing designs. Fabian and Perle carefully approached the pond, their reflections appearing in the ice as they admired its beauty. Nearby, they found a circle of stones arranged in a perfect ring. The stones were covered in snow and frost, but their arrangement was precise and intentional. It seemed as though the stones had been placed there by someone long ago, their purpose lost to time. Fabian and Perle stood within the circle, feeling a sense of connection to the forest's ancient magic. The enchanted forest continued to reveal its wonders as they ventured deeper. They came across a grove of trees with trunks that appeared to be covered in shimmering, silver bark. The light filtering through the trees created patterns of light and shadow on the ground, adding to the forest's magical ambience. As the sun began to set, the light in the forest changed, casting a soft, golden glow over everything. The shadows lengthened and the forest took on a more mystical quality. Fabian and Perle watched as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, creating a beautiful play of light and color. The forest was bathed in twilight, and the temperature dropped, making the air crisp and cool. Fabian and Perle decided to make their way back, their hearts full of the wonder and magic they had experienced. The enchanted forest had been a place of beauty and mystery, a realm where the ordinary was transformed into the extraordinary. As they left the forest, the stars began to appear in the night sky, their twinkling lights a reminder of the enchantment they had just witnessed. Fabian and Perle walked back through the snowy landscape, their spirits lifted by the magic of the enchanted forest. The memories of their adventure would be cherished, a testament to the wonders that could be found in even the most unexpected places. Chapter 23: The Starlit Cabin. Winter's chill had settled deep into the town, and Fabian and Perle, yearning for a cozy retreat, decided to visit a secluded cabin they had heard about. The cabin was nestled high in the mountains, hidden from view by dense forest and snow-covered slopes. They packed their essentials and set out for their winter escape. The journey to the cabin was a trek through the snow-covered landscape. Fabian and Perle followed a narrow trail that wound its way up the mountain, the snow crunching under their boots. The trees along the path were heavy with snow, and the air was crisp and invigorating. After a few hours of hiking, they reached the cabin, its wooden exterior partially obscured by a thick layer of snow. The cabin was charming, with its stone chimney and warm, inviting lights glowing through the windows. The sight of the cabin, nestled in its snowy setting, brought a sense of peace and anticipation. Inside, the cabin was a cozy haven from the winter cold. The interior was warmly lit by a crackling fire in the stone hearth. The room was furnished with rustic wooden furniture, and the walls were adorned with handcrafted decorations that added to the cabin's charm. Fabian and Perle unpacked their belongings and settled in, their faces lit with contentment as they looked around the welcoming space. They made themselves comfortable by the fire, its warmth spreading through the room and creating a sense of coziness. As evening fell, they ventured outside to explore the snowy surroundings. The night sky was clear, and the stars shone brightly against the dark expanse. The snow-covered ground reflected the starlight, creating a soft, shimmering effect that made the night seem magical. They took a walk around the cabin, their footsteps leaving faint impressions in the fresh snow. The landscape was a winter wonderland, with snow-covered trees and gently rolling hills. The stars above twinkled like diamonds, their light casting a serene glow over the peaceful scene. Returning to the cabin, Fabian and Perle decided to enjoy the tranquility of the night sky from the comfort of the cabin's porch. They wrapped themselves in warm blankets and sat together on the porch, their gaze fixed on the starlit sky. The crisp, cold air was invigorating, and the silence was profound, broken only by the occasional crackle of the fire inside. The cabin's windows were frosted with delicate patterns of ice, and the light from the fire cast a warm, inviting glow. Fabian and Perle spent the evening in quiet contemplation, their hearts full of the peace and beauty of the starlit night. As the night deepened, they retired to the cozy warmth of the cabin, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. The room was filled with the comforting scent of wood smoke and the soft, gentle glow of the fire. They relaxed by the fire, their thoughts drifting as they enjoyed the serenity of their retreat. The starlit cabin had been a perfect escape from the daily routine, a place of tranquility and beauty. Fabian and Perle's hearts were full of gratitude for the peaceful retreat and the memories they had created. As they settled into the comfort of the cabin, they knew that the experience would be a cherished part of their journey, a reminder of the simple joys and the magic of the winter season. Chapter 24: The Icy Cavern. Winter's deepening cold inspired Fabian and Perle to seek out new adventures. One frosty morning, they set out to explore an icy cavern rumored to be hidden within the mountain range that bordered their town. The cavern was said to be a natural wonder, with ice formations that sparkled like gems. They traveled through the snow-covered landscape, their path leading them through dense forest and up rugged mountain trails. The air was crisp and the sky a clear, wintry blue. The journey was challenging, but their excitement kept their spirits high. After several hours of hiking, they arrived at the entrance of the cavern, a large, dark opening in the side of the mountain. The entrance was partially obscured by snow and ice, but they could see the faint glimmer of ice formations within. Fabian and Perle carefully made their way inside, the cool air from the cavern greeting them with a refreshing chill. The interior of the cavern was a breathtaking sight. The walls and ceiling were covered in intricate ice formations that sparkled and shimmered in the dim light. The ice was clear in some places, revealing stunning patterns and colors. In other areas, the ice was frosted and opaque, adding a sense of mystery to the cavern's interior. Fabian and Perle wandered through the cavern, their footsteps echoing softly in the icy silence. The ground was uneven and covered in a layer of frost, requiring careful navigation. The cavern's natural beauty was overwhelming, with each new chamber revealing different and mesmerizing ice formations. They discovered a large chamber with an ice column that rose from the ground to the ceiling. The column was adorned with delicate icicles that glistened like crystal. The light from their lanterns created a rainbow effect as it passed through the ice, casting colorful reflections on the cavern walls. In another part of the cavern, they found a series of ice formations that resembled frozen waterfalls. The ice had formed in long, cascading layers, creating the illusion of flowing water frozen in time. The sight was both awe-inspiring and serene, and Fabian and Perle took their time admiring the natural artistry of the ice. As they explored deeper into the cavern, they encountered a small, frozen pool. The surface of the pool was covered in a thick layer of ice, with intricate frost patterns etched into its surface. Fabian and Perle carefully approached the pool, marveling at the frozen beauty beneath the ice. The cavern was filled with the gentle sound of dripping water, the result of melting ice that had formed delicate stalactites hanging from the ceiling. The sound was soothing, adding to the cavern's tranquil atmosphere. Fabian and Perle paused to listen, their hearts full of the peaceful ambience of their surroundings. After several hours of exploration, they decided to head back, their journey through the cavern complete. The icy world they had discovered was a testament to nature's beauty and power. They made their way back to the entrance, their senses still tingling from the cold and the wonder of the cavern. As they emerged from the cavern and stepped back into the daylight, the crisp winter air felt invigorating. The icy cavern had been a remarkable adventure, a place where nature's artistry was on full display. Fabian and Perle returned to their town with a deep sense of satisfaction and appreciation for the natural wonders they had experienced. Their exploration of the icy cavern had added a new and unforgettable chapter to their journey, a reminder of the hidden treasures that awaited those who ventured into the heart of nature. Chapter 25. The Moonlit Meadow. As winter began to wane, Fabian and Perle decided to embrace the changing season with one final adventure. They set out to explore a secluded meadow that was said to be especially enchanting under the light of the full moon. The meadow, located on the edge of a forest, promised a serene and magical experience. One crisp evening, as the full moon began to rise, Fabian and Perle made their way through the snow-covered woods to reach the meadow. The moonlight bathed the landscape in a soft, silvery glow, casting long shadows and illuminating the snow with a gentle, ethereal light. The path to the meadow was lined with frosted trees, their branches heavy with snow. The air was cold and clear, and the stars sparkled brightly in the night sky. Fabian and Perle walked carefully, their footsteps muffled by the deep snow, their breaths visible in the chilly air. As they approached the meadow, the trees parted to reveal a vast expanse of open ground. The meadow was covered in a thick blanket of snow, its surface shimmering under the moonlight. The snow sparkled like a field of diamonds, and the landscape seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. In the center of the meadow stood a solitary, ancient oak tree. Its gnarled branches were bare but adorned with delicate frost, and its silhouette stood out starkly against the moonlit sky. Fabian and Perle approached the tree, its presence commanding a sense of reverence and tranquility. They decided to sit by the tree, their backs resting against its sturdy trunk. The snow around them was untouched, creating a pristine and peaceful setting. The moonlight created a halo effect around the tree, casting a soft glow that illuminated the snow and added to the meadow's enchanting atmosphere. As they sat quietly, Fabian and Perle watched the moon as it moved across the sky, its light shifting and changing the landscape's appearance. The shadows of the tree's branches danced across the snow, creating intricate patterns that seemed to shift with the moon's movement. The stillness of the meadow was profound, broken only by the occasional whisper of the wind through the trees. The silence was soothing, and the moonlight created a sense of calm and wonder. Fabian and Perle took in the beauty of their surroundings, their hearts full of appreciation for the serene landscape. After some time, they stood and wandered through the meadow, their steps leaving gentle impressions in the snow. They explored the edges of the meadow, where the snow-covered grass and frosted shrubs added to the winter's charm. The landscape was a magical realm, transformed by the moon's light into a place of serene beauty. As the night deepened, the moon reached its zenith, casting its full light over the meadow. The snow glistened with an almost surreal quality, and the landscape felt timeless and infinite. Fabian and Perle felt a deep connection to the natural world, their spirits uplifted by the moonlit beauty that surrounded them. Eventually, they made their way back through the snow-covered woods, their hearts full of the peace and wonder they had experienced in the moonlit meadow. The full moon had added a touch of magic to their journey, and they knew that the memory of the meadow would be a cherished part of their adventure. As they returned to their home, the moonlight continued to shine brightly, a reminder of the enchanting night they had spent in the meadow. Fabian and Perle's journey had come full circle, leaving them with a deep sense of gratitude and contentment for the beauty and tranquility they had discovered. Chapter 26: The Forgotten Garden. As the last snows of winter began to melt, Fabian and Perle decided to explore a place that had long intrigued them, the Forgotten Garden. It was an overgrown, abandoned garden located on the outskirts of town, hidden from view by a tangle of vines and trees. The garden was said to be a relic of a bygone era, with hidden beauty waiting to be rediscovered. On a sunny afternoon, Fabian and Perle set out for the garden, their hearts filled with anticipation. They followed a narrow, winding path that led them through dense foliage and undergrowth. The path was barely discernible, obscured by years of neglect and the encroaching wilderness. As they approached the garden, they pushed through a thicket of brambles and vines. The entrance to the garden was marked by a wrought iron gate, rusted and covered in ivy. Fabian and Perle carefully pushed the gate open, the hinges creaking softly as they entered the garden. The garden was a hidden oasis, overgrown but still hinting at its former splendor. The once pristine paths were now covered in a thick layer of moss and fallen leaves. The flower beds were choked with weeds, but there were still signs of the garden's previous beauty. Old stone fountains, statues partially obscured by ivy, and remnants of long-forgotten plantings. They wandered through the garden, their steps careful as they navigated the overgrown terrain. The air was filled with the scent of damp earth and the faint aroma of wildflowers beginning to bloom. Sunlight filtered through the dense canopy of trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. In one corner of the garden, they discovered an old stone bench, partially covered in moss and ivy. The bench was weathered but still sturdy, and they decided to sit for a moment, taking in the tranquility of the forgotten space. The garden was quiet, save for the occasional chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. Nearby, Fabian and Perle found a small, overgrown pond. The surface of the pond was covered in a layer of fallen leaves and algae, but the clear water beneath hinted at its former clarity. They carefully approached the pond, peering into the water to observe the delicate patterns of light and shadow created by the reflections of the surrounding foliage. As they continued their exploration, they came across an old greenhouse, its glass panels cracked and covered in grime. The interior of the greenhouse was a tangle of dead plants and broken pots, but there was a sense of nostalgia in the remnants of what had once been a vibrant, flourishing space. The garden also had a series of overgrown pathways lined with crumbling stone walls. The walls were partially covered in moss and creeping vines, and the pathways were obscured by layers of fallen leaves and branches. Fabian and Perle carefully navigated these paths, discovering hidden corners and forgotten nooks. In one secluded area of the garden, they found a small, abandoned gazebo. The gazebo was adorned with intricate wooden carvings, now weathered and worn. It was surrounded by a tangle of wild flowers and creeping vines, adding to its sense of mystery and charm. Fabian and Perle took a moment to admire the gazebo, their imaginations envisioning the garden in its former glory. As the afternoon drew to a close, the sunlight began to fade, casting a warm, golden hue over the garden. Fabian and Perle made their way back to the entrance, their hearts full of the beauty and history they had uncovered. The forgotten garden had been a hidden treasure, a place where the past and present intertwined in a landscape of serene decay and timeless beauty. Leaving the garden, they felt a deep sense of appreciation for the forgotten spaces that held remnants of the past. The memory of the garden would stay with them, a testament to the beauty that could be found even in places long overlooked and neglected. Chapter 27: The Twilight Lighthouse. As spring approached, Fabian and Perle sought a new adventure by the sea. They had heard of an old, abandoned lighthouse located on a rugged coastal cliff, a beacon of history now silent but still standing tall. The lighthouse was said to offer breathtaking views and a sense of solitude amidst the crashing waves. One late afternoon, with the sun beginning its descent towards the horizon, Fabian and Perle made their way to the lighthouse. They followed a narrow, winding path that led them through rolling dunes and over rocky outcrops. The scent of salt water and the sound of distant waves filled the air, enhancing their anticipation. The lighthouse came into view, its tall, white structure standing stark against the backdrop of the setting sun. The lighthouse was weathered by the elements, with peeling paint and rusted metalwork, but it still retained its imposing presence. Fabian and Perle approached the lighthouse, the path leading them through a field of wild grasses and sea flowers. As they reached the base of the lighthouse, they noticed the surrounding area was strewn with remnants of its past. A rusty old bell, broken glass from the lighthouse's windows, and weathered maritime equipment. The lighthouse's door was slightly ajar, and Fabian and Perle carefully pushed it open, stepping inside. The interior of the lighthouse was dim and dusty, with the remnants of its past operations scattered around. The walls were lined with faded maritime maps and old photographs of the lighthouse in its prime. The spiral staircase, made of creaking metal, ascended towards the lantern room at the top. Fabian and Perle began their climb up the staircase, their footsteps echoing softly in the narrow, winding space. The climb was steep, but the promise of the view from the top motivated them. The staircase was illuminated by shafts of golden light filtering through cracks in the walls, creating a play of light and shadow that enhanced the sense of mystery and anticipation. Upon reaching the top, they emerged into the lantern room, the view stretching out before them in a magnificent panorama. The lantern room was open to the elements, with a large, glassless dome offering an unobstructed view of the coastline. The sight was breathtaking. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the sea and the rugged cliffs below. Fabian and Perle took in the beauty of the scene, the waves crashing against the rocks and the sky painted with hues of orange, pink, and purple. The lighthouse's vantage point offered a sweeping view of the coastline, with its dramatic cliffs and rolling waves. The contrast between the calm, serene sky and the powerful, restless sea created a mesmerizing effect. They spent some time at the top, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky filled with stars and the first hints of twilight. The transition from day to night was gradual and soothing, with the sky shifting from vibrant colors to deep blues and purples. As the evening settled in, Fabian and Perle descended the staircase, their hearts filled with the beauty and tranquility of the lighthouse. The lighthouse had been a beacon of solitude and inspiration, offering a rare and unforgettable perspective on the natural world. Leaving the lighthouse, they walked back along the path, their senses still tingling from the experience. The memory of the Twilight Lighthouse and its stunning views would remain with them, a reminder of the serene beauty and timeless majesty of the coastal landscape. The adventure had been a perfect conclusion to their springtime explorations, adding a sense of closure and fulfillment to their journey. Chapter 28: The Secret Sanctuary. With the onset of early summer, Fabian and Perle felt drawn to a remote location that had been a subject of fascination for them, a hidden sanctuary deep within a sprawling forest. The sanctuary was rumored to be a place of ancient beauty, a secluded grove where nature had been left undisturbed. Early one morning, as the sun's first rays began to warm the earth, Fabian and Perle set out for the sanctuary. They followed a barely discernible trail through the forest, the air filled with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. The forest was lush and green, with dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. The path was winding and overgrown, but Fabian and Perle navigated it with care, their excitement growing as they approached their destination. The forest was dense, and the foliage was thick, creating a sense of mystery and anticipation as they ventured deeper into the woods. After a prolonged walk, the trees began to part, revealing the entrance to the sanctuary. It was marked by a natural archway formed by intertwining branches and vines. Fabian and Perle stepped through the archway and into a serene, secluded clearing. The sanctuary was a tranquil haven, a perfect circle of untouched nature surrounded by ancient trees. The ground was covered in a lush carpet of moss and delicate wildflowers, creating a soft, inviting surface. At the center of the clearing was a small, crystal-clear pond, its surface mirroring the surrounding trees and sky. The pond was encircled by smooth, flat stones, and the water was so clear that they could see the soft, silken sand at the bottom. Around the pond, the wildflowers were in full bloom, their vibrant colors adding a splash of beauty to the serene setting. The air was filled with the gentle hum of bees and the fragrance of the flowers. Fabian and Perle wandered around the clearing, taking in the peaceful surroundings. They noticed the intricate patterns formed by the play of light and shadow on the ground, created by the dappled sunlight filtering through the forest canopy. The sanctuary felt like a hidden gem, a place where time seemed to stand still. In one corner of the clearing, they discovered a small, stone altar covered in moss. The altar was simple but elegant, with intricate carvings that hinted at its ancient origins. Fabian and Perle approached the altar, their senses attuned to the quiet reverence of the place. They continued their exploration, finding a grove of trees that seemed to form a natural cathedral. The trees were tall and majestic, their branches stretching high into the sky and creating a sense of grandeur. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft, golden light on the forest floor. As the day wore on, the light began to shift, casting long shadows and creating a warm, golden glow over the sanctuary. Fabian and Perle found a comfortable spot by the pond and settled in, their hearts full of the tranquility and beauty of the hidden grove. The sanctuary was a perfect escape from the outside world, a place where nature had been preserved in its purest form. Fabian and Perle felt a deep sense of connection to the land, their spirits rejuvenated by the serenity of the sanctuary. As the sun began to set, casting a soft twilight over the clearing, they made their way back through the forest, their hearts full of the peace and beauty they had experienced. The secret sanctuary had been a place of wonder and renewal, a hidden treasure that would remain a cherished memory in their hearts. Their journey had taken them to many remarkable places, but the sanctuary's quiet elegance and natural splendor stood out as a highlight of their summer adventures. Chapter 29. The Enchanted Glade. With summer in full bloom, Fabian and Perle sought a new adventure, drawn by tales of an enchanted glade said to be hidden within the heart of an ancient forest. The glade was rumored to be a place of magical beauty, where nature and wonder intertwined seamlessly. One bright and clear morning, they set out on their quest to find the glade. The forest was alive with the sounds of summer, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the occasional flutter of butterflies. The air was warm and fragrant with the scent of blooming flowers and rich, damp earth. Their journey took them along a winding path lined with towering trees and dense underbrush. The path was overgrown, and the forest seemed almost alive with the vibrancy of summer. Fabian and Perle moved carefully, their eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of the legendary glade. After several hours of walking, the trees began to thin, and the forest opened up to reveal a breathtaking sight. The glade was a circular clearing surrounded by ancient trees, their branches forming a natural dome overhead. The sunlight poured into the glade, creating a magical play of light and shadow on the ground. At the center of the glade was a small, crystal-clear pond. The water was calm and still, perfectly reflecting the surrounding trees and the dappled sunlight. The edges of the pond were lined with smooth stones and delicate ferns, adding to the glade's ethereal beauty. The ground of the glade was covered in a soft, thick carpet of lush green grass and vibrant wildflowers. The flowers were in full bloom, their colors ranging from vivid purples and pinks to soft yellows and blues. Butterflies and bees flitted from flower to flower, adding to the sense of enchantment. Fabian and Perle explored the glade, their steps light and reverent as they took in the serene beauty of the place. They noticed the intricate patterns of light and shadow created by the interplay of sunlight and the tree canopy above. The glade seemed to be a living tapestry of natural splendor. In one corner of the glade, they discovered a small, moss-covered stone structure. It was an ancient altar, or perhaps a forgotten seat, its surface adorned with delicate carvings of leaves and flowers. Fabian and Perle approached the structure, their hands gently brushing the soft moss as they admired the craftsmanship. The glade was peaceful and still, with only the gentle sounds of nature breaking the silence. The air was cool and refreshing, a perfect contrast to the warmth of the summer sun. Fabian and Perle felt a deep sense of connection to the natural world, as though they had stepped into a realm where time stood still. As the afternoon sun began to lower in the sky, the glade took on a warm, golden glow. The light created long, soft shadows that added a sense of depth and magic to the already enchanting scene. Fabian and Perle settled by the pond, their hearts full of the tranquility and wonder of the glade. The day passed slowly in the glade, each moment filled with the serene beauty of the surroundings. As the sun began to set, the light in the glade changed, casting a soft, golden hue over everything. Fabian and Perle reluctantly prepared to leave, knowing that the memory of the enchanted glade would stay with them long after they had departed. They made their way back through the forest, their hearts full of the magic and beauty they had experienced. The enchanted glade had been a perfect conclusion to their summer adventures, a hidden gem that had left them with a sense of wonder and fulfillment. The journey to the glade had been a testament to the beauty that could be found in the hidden corners of the world, a reminder of the magic and wonder that lay just beyond the everyday. Fabian and Perle's exploration had been a celebration of nature's splendor, a journey that had enriched their hearts and souls. Chapter 30. The Eternal Horizon. As summer began to wane, Fabian and Perle decided to embark on one final adventure to celebrate the journey they had shared. They chose to visit a remote coastal cliff known for its breathtaking sunsets and panoramic views, a place where the horizon seemed to stretch into infinity. One crisp evening, with the sky painted in hues of soft orange and pink, they set out for the cliff. The path to the cliff was a gentle ascent through rolling meadows and rocky outcrops. The air was cool and carried the scent of the sea, adding to their sense of anticipation. As they approached the edge of the cliff, the expansive view opened up before them. The cliff jutted out over the ocean, providing an unobstructed panorama of the vast, open sea and the horizon beyond. The setting sun was casting a warm, golden glow over the water, creating a shimmering path of light that stretched out to the farthest reaches of the horizon. Fabian and Perle walked to the edge of the cliff, the ground beneath them firm and solid. The wind was gentle, carrying the salty tang of the ocean and rustling the tall grasses that grew along the cliff's edge. They stood in silent awe, their eyes drinking in the beauty of the scene. The sun continued its descent, painting the sky in deeper shades of orange, pink, and purple. The colors reflected off the surface of the ocean, creating a stunning gradient that blended seamlessly into the twilight sky. The horizon appeared almost limitless, a reminder of the vastness and beauty of the world. As the sun sank lower, the colors in the sky grew richer and more intense. The first stars began to appear, their light twinkling faintly against the backdrop of the deepening evening. Fabian and Perle took in the peaceful transition from day to night, the serenity of the moment filling their hearts. The scene was tranquil and awe-inspiring, a perfect culmination of their journey. The horizon seemed to stretch on forever, symbolizing the endless possibilities and adventures that lay ahead. Fabian and Perle felt a profound sense of contentment and fulfillment, their journey having brought them to this beautiful, serene moment. As the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, the sky was filled with the soft glow of twilight. The ocean continued to shimmer with the fading light, and the stars grew brighter, gradually taking over the sky. Fabian and Perle stood quietly, their hands intertwined, savoring the beauty of the evening. With the last light of day giving way to the peaceful darkness of night, they began their descent from the cliff. The journey had been a celebration of the natural world, a testament to the beauty and wonder that could be found in every corner of the earth. Their hearts were full as they made their way back through the meadows, the memory of the sunset and the eternal horizon etched into their minds. The final adventure had been a perfect conclusion to their journey, a reminder of the limitless beauty that lay beyond the everyday. Fabian and Perle returned home, their spirits enriched by the experiences they had shared. The horizon had offered them a glimpse of infinity, a symbol of the boundless possibilities and the endless journey that lay ahead. Their adventure had come full circle, leaving them with a deep sense of gratitude and a heart full of cherished memories.